Morning. Welcome to Fridays with Foster. I'm your host, Foster. So today, I'm still waiting on my next delivery of the um, Pete's Coffee subscription. I think they said it's going to be shipped on the 8th, so we'll follow up with that. But I did go back to a good one. So my friend Mike Rawls at Addictive Coffee Roasters has the morning coffee blend. Got that in the French press. We're gonna take a sip. It's been a little while. I've been hitting up that peach for a bit. That's good though, man. It's a dark roast, but it tastes a little bit light, but not bitter at all. So anyway, love it. And I actually want to try some of his instant coffee. He's got some instant coffee packets that seems to be kind of neat. So moving on. Today, ownership versus leadership, or what I also like to say is ownership doesn't equal leadership. So some wonderful quotes about ownership that I love. And let's differentiate here. I've got the book that I've been talking about with Jocko Willing of extreme ownership. That's not the type of ownership I'm talking about now. What I'm talking about now is a lot of people, because they are a business owner or because they feel that they own a department, that automatically grants them the right and title of leader. And I think that's a big misconception that just because you are the owner, just because you even have partial ownership in the business, or if you're a family member, sometimes it can get even more mixed up in that understanding. But just because you have these things does not make you a leader. So a leader, Vicente del Bosque said, a leader is admired, a boss is feared. And Alexander the Great has a wonderful quote about the leadership. He said, I'm not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion. And how important is that mentality, right, with leadership that we talk about? Another great quote, Robert Frost, on a couple of funny ones. He said, by working faithfully 8 hours a day, you may eventually get to be boss and work 12 hours a day. So that's the idea of a boss. We do not want to look at being a boss. We want to look at being a leader. Dwight Eisenhower said that leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. So matching up and having an alignment there with our causes and our purpose and things like that. And then last, Woody Allen said, I'm the boss in my house. My wife is just the decision maker. And if you've met my wife, you know that is definitely the case. I do whatever I want as long as it's okay with her. So there's a little bit of fear there. But fear also, I want her to be happy. So so what is ownership? So ownership is it's a position. Ownership is a title. Leadership is a language. It's a purpose. Leadership is something that we look at from a development standpoint, not something that you buy or is thrust upon you and granted to you. The definition of ownership is the act, state, or right of possessing something. And then on the other side, leadership, the definition is the capacity to provide direction or guidance. So this is where it gets really difficult. For a lot of business owners that I work with have either come up through the business, especially if it's a family business, they were bred into the business, If they are a contractor, a lot of times they came up through the trades and didn't enter in laterally, if you will. And they were taught a certain way to train, a certain way to communicate. A lot of this has to do with telling. I had a business owner that I spoke to. It was 2 weeks ago, and they had somebody that was working for them and just could not get them to do this very seemingly simple act. And as it was explained to me, it seemed very simple as well. And they've been, this is probably the second or third time that we've talked about it. And we know if we're talking about one of their teammates not being able to do something in our coaching session for the third time, it's a significant issue. There's something else going on there. So, the question I posed was, how do you know that they understand what you want from them? And the answer was classic. It's the answer or the perspective given a lot of the time. And the answer was, well, I've told them several times in detail what needs to be done. And I remarked, I said, I didn't ask you how you knew what you expected to be done. I asked, how do you know that they understand what's expected? Telling is only part of the communication. In fact, it's probably the smallest part. Communication is the response that you get from people. So as a leader, what are you doing beyond telling people what needs to be done? Now, certain leaders, certain business owners, I should say, the reason that they got to the position that they're at in the company is where it is now is because they are driving, because they are able to get things done and move things forward, which is wonderful. But as the Marshall Goldsmith's book is titled, "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," that usually won't get you to a place of sustainability. Where that will get you, as was said by Robert Frost, is working 12 hours a day instead of 8 or more, as a lot of people do. So if we're trying to provide direction or guidance, how do we do that? Well, there's a little bit of faith there, but there's also some planning. A lot of times there is the idea of leading in short stints, small decisions, moving forward with small decisions, like the mining example. So in a mine, they have lights on the helmets, and the lights only shine so far in front of them. They don't shine behind them, so where they just came from really doesn't matter right now. But in front of them, they can see just to the end of the light. Now, if they aren't willing to take a step until they can see well beyond the end of that light, to the end of the mining shaft or wherever they're headed, they're not really going to go anywhere. But as long as they understand that wherever the light stops, that's where they have to engage, to this decision and this decision. A lot of times, leadership is like that, where you're helping people to move just to that next step, As a leader in your position, whether it's at the head of the company or head of your department, you actually have something very valuable, which is a lot of times people get scared having people underneath them that know more than they do. So raise your hand if that scares you. It doesn't scare me, by the way, not anymore. It used to. Like, all my clients are smarter than me. All my clients know more about their business than I do. We're working with one company, and the guy had some really smart guys underneath him in the trades, and they know a lot more. The one guy specifically knows a lot more than him. He came to me one day, he said, "Gosh, Foster, I don't know what to do." I said, "What do you mean? What is there to do?" He said, "I don't know what I'm supposed to teach him. He knows more than I do." I remember him saying, his face just dropped, because this guy's really smart. My client's really smart, but so I can imagine how smart his team member had to be in order for him to talk to like him about this. And he said, "Gosh," said, "he's just so smart. I don't know what I have to possibly teach him." And the thing that I reminded him, as a leader, he has the value of perspective, which is something that his teammate does not have. What he's doing and how he's doing on a tactical level, that's fine. He doesn't need your instruction for that anyway. But where it fits into the scheme strategically of decisions that need to be made in the company is a completely different step of skills. That there allows you as a leader to help them determine or to explain why different things have to be done at different times and in a different order and priority. So there is a value beyond that, having people that are smarter than you that actually guarantees that you will be successful in your position. So really leadership, back to the mine example, so leadership a lot of times is just staying just behind the light, right? Like just that next step and that next step. One thing that I often say, ask clients is and I always get varied answers. I said, what is the number one priority of you, for you as the owner of the business? And they think, and a lot of times they say sales, which is a good one. This is the business owner, right? This isn't the VP of sales or anything like that. Business owner. Sales is a good one. Revenue is a good one. Growth is another good answer. What else do we give? Expansion. Some during COVID would say survival, which, you know, I don't really like that. But anyway, and then another really good one that's always so tough to argue with is profit. And I actually have had business owners argue with me on this. The number one priority of leadership is to develop your people. You need to develop your people. That's it. That is number one, bar none. If you don't have good people, if you don't have people that are trustworthy, that are on the same page, that are aligned with the purpose and the values of the business, and you as well as the leader, it's not going to pan out. Business is not like a helicopter. You can't just hover. You're either going to be growing or you're going to be shrinking. I'm not saying that you have to, you know, grow 20% year over year in gross revenue, but there is a level of growth to keep up with the cost of living, cost of materials, things of that nature. So the question people always ask, well, if we put all this time in developing our people and they leave, then what? And we say, I would much rather spend time and effort developing people to do a great job in our company and have them leave than have them stay undeveloped. So what if we develop them and they leave? What if we don't develop them and they stay? Which would you rather have as a leader? How are you going to grow your team otherwise? Right? If you're not the owner of the business, right? Let's just say you're a C-suite or professional executive or you're in charge of a department. Well, how are you possibly going to move up in the business if you don't have anybody who can fill your spot? Now, yes, we can always bring people in from the outside, but most businesses like to bring people from within because they already understand the situation. Sometimes they don't. They're not afraid that they're not going to have a new look because sometimes businesses will bring individuals in from the outside because they need a fresh set of eyes on things. But usually we like to at least have somebody set up internally as a good possibility. A lot of times people lock themselves into a position. They're afraid of somebody else knowing more than them. So they make sure that they keep everybody in their department underneath them. Or if you're the owner, the C-suite, the owner will keep them underneath them, and thereby guaranteeing the owner or the leader of the department can never leave. They can never step out. The owner is guaranteed to never have passive income from their business because they can't have somebody step up and manage the business for them in their stead. So the question that I would ask to you is, so we all grow up with these misconceptions, and some things we learn our way out of, and some things we kind of accept as the truth. I've often said that my biggest problem is I make stuff up and then I believe it, right? So what are some lifelong conceptions that you need to let go of in order to become a great leader? So what are your fears? Are you afraid that people are going to pass you, right? Are you afraid that you're going to look like you don't know what you're talking about? The great thing about being a leader, leading is not about telling, right? As my example earlier shows. Leading is about asking. When you ask the right questions, you get other people engaged. You get your team engaged. You begin to develop them because then you understand what the situation is, what they do and don't get. The Peter Lencioni, I've mentioned before, as the 5 dysfunctions of a team. If you are asking your team questions and they just sit there, it's kind of like I call it the silent meditation portion of the meeting. When you ask them a question and shut up, right? So ask them a question, be quiet. When they don't offer that information, a lot of times it's because that first level in that dysfunction from Lencioni is a lack of trust. They're afraid. They're afraid to be wrong. So as the leader, you need to make sure that you are instilling a culture of trust and support. It doesn't mean you're going to let somebody not grow and keep making the same mistake again and again and again. But wouldn't you rather them at least take a shot? You know, give an answer. Give their input based on their experience and their perspective in the company, even if they're wrong. You want to be able to support them in that and try and figure out if they are wrong. Well, what's another option? Or what got them to that point? What did they or did they not see? Open-ended questions. That's all leadership, right? So, so what are you afraid of? And a lot of times it's letting go. So there's a story about how they catch monkeys. I think it's in Colombia. Anyway, so what they do is they take a box, they make a box out of sticks, right? And they lash them together. And then on one side of a 6-sided box, they sharpen these sticks and they point them into the box, inward, right? And they're all pointing in the little circle, and then they put nuts or food or treats in there. The monkeys come by and they put their hands in there and they grab whatever's inside and they make a fist, and then they can't get their hand out because it's hitting the sharpened sticks, and the hunters just come along and grab them, and that's the end of that. If only they would let go, they would be fine. There are a lot of things that I see in the business world today with a lot of individuals who are simply afraid to let go. They are afraid to do it because they haven't established a culture of trust, and they don't have the right processes or systems in place to help ensure people know what to do. So I challenge you, if you find yourself in this position, think of just one thing to let go of. Start today. Maybe it's a specific action. One thing that's really easy. So if you're inundated, this is a freebie. This is a great way for clients that if you find yourself as customer service agent in your own company, which means you're Google, right? So people just call you for the answer, and you pick up and interrupt whatever you're doing to answer. So you end up being Google. Or I like to call it tech support also. So the reason that they're doing that is because they have trained you to answer the question. You think you're helping them, right? Something very simple that you can do. Now, it's not easy, but it's simple. You let your guys know when they call you, they have to have 2 potential solutions available. And they have to tell you which one they think is the best. Now, the tough part about it is that when they call next, you've got to pick up the phone and say, hey, okay, what are your two options? Well, I didn't have time. Oh, I can't. No, I didn't have to. Oh, I just didn't. Call me back. And if you stick to that boundary, these teammates are going to start thinking for themselves. They're going to come up with these options. Eventually, they're only going to call you on things that are way out of their league, which none of that should happen by accident. If you're putting them in a position where they could actually be overshadowed by a problem that's that big, then they probably need some additional training or processes. But when you train them to do that, you are acting as a better leader. Call me back with 2 options. Let me know which one is best. You make them think. And they're also less dependent on you, so you can get out of the way. There's other things that you have to do, or if you like to, I don't know, go on vacation, you like a real vacation, not just remotely working from a different place. Eventually, we will be able to travel again and do whatever. But the idea is to shut down, and step back to recharge and sharpen the saw. You can't do that if the company can't run without you, or if your department can't run without you. So I want you to think of something to give up. I already gave you a good example, something that you can do to give up a certain level of control, or maybe something that's standing in the way of you letting go so you can better develop people. When you do that, they will respect you even more as a leader, and they will begin to do the things that you want them to do because they want to do them for the good of the company. So that's it for today. Hope you have a wonderful day. And as always, reach out with any questions, any requests. If you have people, actually, like I said before, I want to start getting some interviews going, even if it's not live. I'll probably just do regular video interviews because I don't think at least Facebook Live or Restream or these other platforms we're trying to look at, they don't always support dual dual monitors, dual Zoom, dual live. So I'm trying to work on that now with somebody else because that's not my bag. I don't need to get into that world demoing platform software and stuff. I'll spend days in there figuring it out. So, but if you know somebody that you would like me to talk to, you've heard ABC always be closing. I like to say ABC always be coaching. Eventually, I would like to turn this Fridays with Foster into a little bit of education, but I really want to turn it into like a weekly live coaching session. So people that have questions, that have concerns, come on, ask their questions, and we can kind of dig into that and see what we can figure out. That's a great way for me to be of service to people and help them in the business world. So have a wonderful day. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you next week.